What is up, guys? Part 2 is here. Now let's get back to our original countdown of the worst post movie episodes of SpongeBob, also known as modern SpongeBob. Okay, at number 5, Little Yellow Book. This episode is basically about where Squidward reads SpongeBob's diary. But then Squidward starts gossiping about all of SpongeBob's secrets in the diary. This is a ripoff of Fools in April, and it's also a ripoff of Secret Box as well. Fools in April and Secret Box are both one of my favorite SpongeBob episodes of all time. And why did Little Yellow Book become so hypocritical? Squidward was at his complete worst throughout the show. He basically just laughs at SpongeBob for every little mishap he's done in this diary. Nothing was really funny in the slightest. Yes, SpongeBob acting like a chicken was kind of funny, but still, when Squidward started laughing at SpongeBob when the Bikini Bottom national anthem was playing while SpongeBob was dancing in his underwear, things started to change. When SpongeBob started crying, everyone in Bikini Bottom started to get mad at Squidward, and they were shocked that it was SpongeBob's diary. That's where they started to rip off Fools in April. The whole thing is like a rip-off of Secret Box, and the second half is like a rip-off of Fools in April. But then, Mr. Krabs tells Squidward to apologize, and Squidward was like, he'll get over it. Squidward was acting nonchalantly. He refused to apologize. He was smiling and laughing. He is showing no sympathy for SpongeBob, having the poor guy so sad. And then he read a newspaper about the fry cook being so sad. Squidward laughs like a maniac, but at least Squidward got his comeuppance later on. At least Squidward got punished. At least his house was destroyed, and at least he got struck by lightning. At least he was living under a bench, and at least Squidward got punished. And I did like the scene where one of the cops said, "My brother had a diary." But still, this episode is still really mean-spirited, over the top. It is a really bad episode. If you were like obsessed with SpongeBob SquarePants, you would like roast Squidward into calamari. And fun fact, Little Yellow Book is 22 Tiger Dude's personal least favorite episode. And yes, this is my least favorite season 9 episode. I gotta bring this closer. At number 4, The Splinter. This is another SpongeBob torture porn. This is basically about where SpongeBob just gets a splinter right after he slips on tartar sauce. So first there's some annoying filler going on, and then SpongeBob ends up getting his spatula stuck on the ceiling. He finally gets it off, but then when he said, "I guess that's it," he looks like he was going to commit suicide. His eyes were shut, he was frowning like he was going to cry. His arms were stretched out, his legs were stretched out. He was about to get cut by so many swords, but then, luckily, he was still alive. But then he gets the splinter. And then, like, every time he tried to remove the splinter, I still cringe watching this. And, yes. And then suddenly, Squidward finds out that there was a giant splinter in SpongeBob. If you want to see an episode about a splinter, just watch Once Bitten instead. Once Bitten is actually a funny episode. And also, the splinter in Sandy's nutmare wasn't that disgusting either. But the splinter just reached to its full potential of being gross. But what's even worse what's worse than the suicide gag? What's worse than Squidward becoming a meanie? The worst part is probably Patrick. So far, it was Patrick's behavior. You remember Suds from season 1. Patrick was the doctor in Suds, and his acts were actually funny. He wasn't doing the right thing. He was making SpongeBob feel worse, but his acts were funny. While in the Splinter, he just makes the Splinter look a whole lot worse by using a mallet. He digs in the Splinter deeper, and then suddenly it gets swollen up, and then he puts garbage on the Splinter to make it look even more disgusting. And then the worst is yet to come. When SpongeBob showed that disgusting, grotesque, hideous Splinter at Mr. Krabs, I was on the verge of throwing up. If you're like riding a sickening roller coaster, and if you're thinking about that scene, you would be projectile vomiting. And the way that Splinter looked, I was like, what the hell did I just watch? Yes. But then finally Mr. Krabs ends up removing the Splinter, and then some raw sewage sprayed on Mr. Krabs' eyes. Yeah, it spewed on him. But then Squidward finally got his comeuppance by getting some workers' compensation by injuring himself with a cash register. But then Squidward obviously has to get back to work because he is just Squidward and he never gets what he wants. Just let Squidward get some peace, especially for SpongeBob. At number 3, Stuck in the Ringer. This one was really, really close to tying To Love a Patty and A Pal for Gary later on. But Stuck in the Ringer basically had probably one of the most controversial and most serious problems of this episode. Most of the episode's problems are basically like lack of humor, over-the-top mean-spirited like Little Yellow Book, and it's just disgusting and depressing. I'm not talking about Are You Happy Now or Dumps type of depressing, but if you're feeling dark, don't watch it. SpongeBob gets stuck in his ringer after slipping on a bar of soap, but Patrick ends up using Forever Glue. Really, Patrick, why do you have to be so thick-headed? But then things go rough with SpongeBob, and then he gets kicked out of work, and then he can't eat ice cream, he can't go to the carnival, then he snaps at Patrick, their friendship end, and then suddenly this stupid ending, the moral basically lied to all of us. This episode is absolutely rushed. Probably one of the most rushed episodes of the show. And it is a really, really uncomfortable episode, which brings out one of the worst in Patrick. At number 2 is To Love a Patty. And I did a full rant on that recently. I did that rant on this episode probably around Christmas Eve or something. So basically, SpongeBob falls in love with a Patty, treats it like it was a fiance or something like that. He refused to hang out with his friends, and then this stupid, boring, unnecessary musical tune pops up. The lyrics suck. The whole entire song is stupid. And what's even worse, he kills Clamps, especially Junior from Rockabye by Valve. But then suddenly the Patty gets messy. And then the Patty stinks up the joint once he gets to the Krusty Krab. Then maggots pop out when Squidward squeezes the Patty. And yeah, the Patty gets dirtier once he enters the Krusty Krab. And there are too many gross outs, the story is creepy, and yes, I agree with Mobra Studios. They try to make a creepy story on purpose. Yeah, this is nothing but a romance story known as a horror movie. This is like a mix between of a horror movie mixed with a little bit of romance. To me, this is more like a horror episode. Yeah, most people hate Squid's visit because it's creepy, but I actually think it's decent. Okay, let's go to number 1. A Pal for Gary. This episode is about where SpongeBob gets Puffy Fluffy for Gary. He basically shoplifts that stupid little creature, and then he introduces it to Gary, and then they don't get along with each other. Puffy Fluffy keeps terrorizing Gary, and then SpongeBob keeps becoming a dick to Gary, just blaming him up. He keeps blaming Gary for no particular reason. Puffy Fluffy tried to kill him. But then this infamous scene pops up later on in the episode where Puffy Fluffy tries to eat Gary. And then he says, "Gary, you put Puffy Fluffy down right now." Basically, switch that thing to me. "Puffy Fluffy, you put Gary down right now." Gary wasn't even holding on Puffy Fluffy. Puffy Fluffy was actually going to suck up Gary. But at least SpongeBob got sucked up into Puffy Fluffy too, because SpongeBob was a complete a-hole. At least Gary's Western trips were a little bit clever. At best, kind of fun with the Western things. But because of how rude and neglectful SpongeBob was to Gary, that definitely ruined SpongeBob's character. This is one of the worst episodes I have seen on television history. And I never want to see A Pal for Gary again. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below, share, subscribe, and I'll tell you what, your opinions actually matter to mine. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.